Welcome to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show. Discover your life's purpose, reprogram your mind for success, and attract an abundance of paying clients to your business. Now, here's your host, Tom Tenaglia.
Aloha, Empowered Entrepreneur. I am Tom Tenaglia, and you're listening to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show. And today I want to talk about the idea that some car companies are thinking about adding subscriptions for services that they're building into their cars. So you might have seen this on online that a couple, actually, I think it was more than one. There was one that was prominently talking about doing this, and I think there was another one I recall seeing that was looking at the same kind of thing. And it was, in this particular example, was around heated seats. And it was the idea that should this car company start charging a monthly fee for heated seats? And at first I'm looking at it going, is this just a headline, or is this actually something that a company is thinking about? Because, whoa, right? Like, we've talked a lot about subscription services, and we've talked about the idea of needing to continuously deliver value with a subscription service, and the idea that, in the past, we used to just be able to save up money, buy software that was rather expensive, use it for decades, and then take that money that we and invest it in another piece of software. And with subscription services, you effectively have to figure out what software you want to run each month. So the idea of the car. So I did a little bit more research into this, and this particular car company, I don't know if they changed their positioning on it after they got some backlash, or if this was their original positioning or not, because all I could find was the explanation that came after the announcement. And they were saying, well, no. Actually, if you buy the feature when you get the car, there's no monthly fee. But if you don't buy the feature when you get the car, we'll already have the feature built into the car, and we can just turn it on with some software and charge you a monthly fee. To me, I would rather also offer the option to add the feature on later for a lifetime fee that is maybe a little bit more money than what you paid for, what you would have paid for in the event that you bought it, right out of the gate, right? So let's say I don't know how much the actual heated seat feature would cost, but let's just say it's like $1,000. Okay, if you bought it with the car. Well, if you're charging $18, right? Okay, so how many years is it going to take to make that $1,000 up? Right? It depends on how many years you're gonna own the car. If it were $10 a month, it's almost 20, right? So, I mean, 5 months is $100. So 5 times, 10 is what, 50 months. So you're almost looking at about 4 years plus before they make up the $1,000 that they might have just gotten if they sold the feature outright. Because whenever you look at, as a marketer, okay, you need to look at lifetime value of the customer. You need to understand, okay, if I'm going to give, where's my churn on a subscription service? How many months is somebody staying with me to figure it out? Because if somebody's paying 18 months, or $18 a month, maybe they only turn on heated seats in the winter. I mean, does the option exist that they could only turn it on for 3 months out of the year? In which case, now they're stretching that $18 a month, getting up to $1,000 over the course of a much longer period of time, when it may make sense to just offer the opportunity. It's actually more profitable, in my opinion, for the company to offer the opportunity to add the feature on with a lifetime fee once, during the course of ownership. Okay, so it's $1,000 if you buy it with the car. It's $2,000 if you buy it later. I mean, that would probably be much more profitable, because to reach you have to figure out how many months is somebody keeping heated seats on, and why would they want to pay for heated seats in the summer? So, I mean, the interesting thing about this one is it was the perception of, wait a minute, you're going to start charging a recurring fee for something that you're choosing to build into the product that the buyer didn't actually ask for. And technically the buyer already bought, because you'd be losing money if you didn't cover the cost of the feature you built into what the buyer paid for the car in the first place. And the idea of this recurring subscription for something that was already there. So there's a lot to think about, because sometimes people think that lifetime value or lifetime purchase is actually a better value. And it is if you plan on using the thing beyond a certain number of months, right? And it may not be otherwise. So if you're offering, you're like, oh, well, how could certain companies survive on lifetime purchase? Well, let's be realistic. A lot of companies just a decade or two ago, that's all they did, right? If they offered software, it was in a box and you paid one fee and you got the software for life. I mean, it was, the software would have been a little bit more money, and they would have to keep selling, to more and more people over time, or they would do upgrades and you would pay for an upgrade. I mean, so that's a different business model, right? Of course, the recurring model adds some predictability to the income each month, and you don't have to worry about financially managing a product that launches and then distributing that money across the course of the year in your finances. You can actually just look at month to month, and you can have a better, in my opinion, a better aspect of managing that revenue. The nature of this offer from a car perspective is a very interesting concept, right? Because if I want to think about, okay, what could this car company have been thinking, right? Like, why would they want to even propose this option? Because is it a revenue option, or is it a trying to be a customer benefit option? Because in all honesty, if it's a customer benefit option, offer the lifetime offer. It's actually probably going to help the revenue even more at that point. Because then, here's what's funny, because then you actually show them, hey, it's $1,000. I'm just making up these numbers, but it's like, it's $1,000 if you buy the feature when you buy the car. It's $2,000 if you buy it later. You want to save $1,000 now. Really, you're spending $1,000. But as a marketer, as a salesperson, you could say, do you want to save $1,000 now? You're saving in comparison to buying it later, right? So to me, it's then putting it in the perspective of the customer and saying, here's added value. So to me, using the idea that you could turn the feature on in the car later should never actually be what's done. It should always, in my opinion, should just be used as a way to get more people to buy the feature outright, right? So instead of saying, because then you can get into all these sales pitches and explain, hey, you would have, it's summer now, but when the winter comes, you're going to wish you had these heated seats. You might as well save $1,000, put the heated seats on your car now, and you'll have them for life going into the winter. You see what I mean? So the fact that the company would build the feature in to have the heated seats no matter what should just be used as a way to market the heated seats, like at the time of purchase, always, in my opinion, and used as a way of, and then of course, yeah, if somebody called up later and said, actually, I want to add the heated seats on, or actually, I didn't have the money then and I want to do it now and I know it's going to cost me twice as much. Sure, but that's probably going to be the exception. And at no point really should it come down to subscription. I mean, in my opinion on this one, because you're getting no additional value out of it, unless what the value is simply saying you can turn it on and off each month if you want it, right? So hey, you could pay $1,000 at the time of purchase, you could pay $2,000, lifetime later, or you could pay $18 a month each month you want it on. Your choice. But I would personally aim to have the fact that the feature is being built as a way of marketing the lifetime purchase at the time of the purchase of the car, because then the customer is getting more value out of it. It's all in how you're framing these things. Instead, the way the company positioned it, unintentionally, in my opinion, is that they were just trying to get more and more money for the same product. And they were, and that's how, when I was reading ways that people were responding to this, it was like, wait a minute, why are you charging me more for something that I already bought? Yada, yada, yada. And that was the perception. So it's interesting when you actually look at the financials and when you look at the value equation, how you can do this such that it benefits the customer and the company. And that's really the greater lesson out of that. It's really a greater lesson out of that. There was another car company that actually was already doing this, and I think we talked about it at one point in a previous episode, because what they were doing is, if you went to sell the car, the optional features you bought, they would turn off, and they would want the new buyer to turn those features back on and pay the dollar amount. And that was actually detrimental to the person who originally bought the car, because then they basically couldn't re-get the dollar amount that they paid for the car. And so it's like, well, why am I going to sell it? Because, then the person only wants to buy the base car because that's all they're going to get, because the company's going to turn off all these other features and I'm out all this other money. And so it was kind of counterproductive. And really, at a certain period of time, you have a bunch of used, I could say pre-owned, but this is just marketing. You have a bunch of used cars, of that brand, that is a different brand than the one with the heated seats, that were just sitting around because no one wanted, the buy-sell exchange didn't make any sense, because the company was trying to get each buyer to rebuy the same thing over and over and over again, right? So it's a very interesting perspective, right? It's like, what's the trickle-down effect of these decisions, and what's the perception of the ultimate owners? Would I actually want to buy either one of those brands at this point? No, personally, I wouldn't, because the heated seat one, I'm like, well, what's next? What are they going to flip the switch, for next? Are they going to limit the amount of gas I can put into the tank? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And then, so that it's like, it's just a slippery slope. The other car, I realized that if I buy it, my chances of selling it, as long as the company has this policy of making the new buyer rebuy all the features, is very slim, or I'm going to get very little for it. And therefore it doesn't make any sense, like my future value. Right? So, I mean, so the companies have to think through these types of things. It's interesting that both of these are in automotive, right? But really what's happening in automotive is the idea of software. And, at one point, cars moved from more mechanical to more software driven anyway. And then now they're going through the evolution that software has been going through in the last 5 to 10 years, which is moving from more boxes of software to software as a service and subscription models and over the internet and that type of thing. And you can either internet enable the car, or you can programmatically enable or disable features at a dealership, or whatever the case may be, right? So you're watching this software enablement, right, of things that and that they can tie to with the finances. So this is a very interesting model, right? So if you say, well, okay, hey, you look at software subscriptions, right? So industry software subscriptions, where maybe that entire industry just has to, like, it's just their expected product, and therefore they have to buy that subscription. And a lot of other people stop using that software. They're like, well, it doesn't make any sense because I'm not part of that industry, and therefore, the dollar amount of that software is not justifiable. You're like, okay, well, is that impacting the company? Maybe from a reputational perspective in that case, right? Because those that are part of the industry, they're like, hey, it's a necessary purchase. Those that aren't part of the industry are like, I'm not going to use it anymore. And now the paradox with that is you probably have more people outside of an industry, and therefore it's like, oh, well, yeah, we're just not going to, buy that software. It's like, are you delivering enough value. Now, this is interesting. I bought a technical product that helps with different. It's a wearable, and it helps with different tracking different cycles and things like that. With just like my sleep cycles and certain things like that. And I actually like it. And at one point, they didn't have a subscription. I wasn't actually with them when they didn't have a subscription. But they offered, at the start, they offered a 6-month experience of the entire product without subscription. So like kind of part of that original purchase. And what they did is actually very interesting. They built sensors into the wearable that they haven't actually finished writing the software for yet. And so what's happening is as I'm paying a subscription, they're also releasing updates to the software, features to the wearable, and they're actually putting more into the product as a result of the subscription. And so almost every month, maybe every 2 months, definitely every quarter, there's something that I've seen so far. I haven't been with them that long. That they're actually delivering value on. And so it's a purchase where I go, okay, I'm actually getting more and more and more out of it. Plus, I'm getting the value from the data of what it's already capturing. Now you could argue, well, if you have an app and it's Bluetooth, why do they need it connected to the cloud? And you could just get the data locally, and why not have that as an option too? And actually, I think they could turn that into an option. I think at one point they could say, hey, there's a non-cloud version, that's just local, and it'll do, these types of things. And if you want that, that's free. But, that isn't what they've done at this point, because their model's currently working, and so they're just going to stick to it. Right. And so I do think that there's ways of looking at that, because you might be like, well, why does it even need to be, a piece of software that is connected to the internet as opposed to just local to your phone? And really, it's because of the updates and everything that they're doing. So they've added value to it. So instead of building all those features in and then shipping the product, they actually just said, well, what do we need to build into the wearable that we can then add the software for later? And I don't know if they were intentionally linking its value to the subscription or not. But really, it's a rather inexpensive subscription as of this point. Hopefully they keep it that way, or at least they honor people that have been with them, from the beginning. All the way up, right? So there's different ways of looking at, okay, what is the impact of this decision? I've seen companies, I think I've done podcasts on this too, that I've left because those companies, they had one pricing model, and then they changed the pricing model, and then instead of honoring it, they said, hey, whatever you have in your account, okay, we'll honor that at the pricing model, but anything more is going to basically be the new pricing model. And they don't realize the impact that it has to your business. And so I've left companies that do that. It's like, okay, fine. If you want to pivot, but you're not going to, you might lose these people. And I've seen companies time and time again that keep changing things, and they keep impacting those that have been with them for a while. And it's tricky. Or they do marketing that's based on acquiring new customers as opposed to also the retention and the impact of the retention and the market reputation and all of that. So really, when I saw this about this whole card decision, right, it got me into realizing, wait a minute, I think the car company could actually do a lot better just by changing how they position the offer. And yeah, they could build those features in, and all they have to do is change how they position the offer, and they'll probably deliver better value to their customers. And they could actually, if they train their sales folks, in my opinion, well enough, they could basically get more people buying that feature outright. And if it only costs $10 to put in or $100 to put in, they're selling it for $1,000 or $2,000 a pop. Like they only need 10 people to buy it, or 100, or one person to buy it to cover for 10 or something, 10 to don't, or whatever the math actually works out to be. Right. So like they could actually really, they could really expand based on that. So thinking through the impact of the way that you position the offer and the financials and how and what the perception of that particular method of that offer actually is, right? So how that offer is being conveyed, right? Because everybody likes to get more stuff. No customer likes to be either getting less stuff or likes to be paying for stuff they already got for free. So those are always two points. Like I think I shared, it was a while ago, the idea that there was this candy store that, there's, as the story goes, that kids would pass on their way home from school. They go into the candy store, and they always liked one candy store because it had this person in there, and the researchers, as far as I remember, couldn't figure out why the kids would walk a completely different direction, go out of their way to go to this other candy store when a different one was on their way home. And when they researched, they realized that the candy store that the kids would go to that they didn't like, what would happen is the person behind the counter would put a bunch of candy onto the scale, and then they would take candy off the scale to get to the weight. Versus the candy store they liked, they put the exact same candy onto the scale, a little bit less, and then added more to it and never took candy off the scale. And it's this perception of you're getting more. And actually, in that case, they were getting more, right? So it's a very very interesting idea to think about. And just in how you position the offer, the reputation, the retention, the finances, the publicity, the marketing, all that plays along. Offers are so important. So important. So anyway, it's quite a bit of explanation, taking you through a couple of different ways these play out, and hope that gives you some things to consider as you consider different ways of creating offers in your business. So we covered a lot there. If you need any help with this, implementing it in your business, send me an email, support@empoweredentrepreneursshow.com. And and with that, aloha, hui ho. I'll talk with you again soon. Take care now. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show.